Hi folks, I'm glad you're all here with me today. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. And thank you for joining me to all the new subscribers. Late last night, there by Elgin, South Carolina, there was a magnitude 1.9 earthquake. Did you feel this earthquake? It was a shallow earthquake, only 1.8 miles in depth, or 2.9 kilometers. These small earthquakes are usually not strong enough to be felt by people, but 42 people did send in reports to USGS that they did feel this earthquake. You can see we got a subdivision over here. There was also a magnitude 2.2. Now that was on October 6th of last year, close to this same location. South Carolina has a history of experiencing earthquakes, although they are generally not as frequent or intense as in some other parts of the United States. But you can see here, let's bring it up. Yeah, there's been quite a few earthquakes close to Elgin. I don't have them all posted. I believe these earthquakes actually started in 2021. And in 2022, there was a magnitude 3.6 with an intensity level of 5. And then a little bit smaller, a 3.5 with an intensity level of 6. Now, intensity level 5 means it was felt by most people, and there was some breakage. Maybe dishes, windows, cracks in the wall. Tall objects might have fallen over. Intensity level 6 means it was felt by all. Many people were frightened and ran outdoors. Falling plaster, chimneys, and some light damage. Many probably don't realize the large earthquake threat that there is in South Carolina. Example, in 1886, there was a magnitude maybe 6.9 to a 7.3. Let me bring it down here to where that was located at. It's got an interesting history. Down over there. Okay. Yeah. A 6.9, maybe a 7.3. This is an area drawn out in yellow. They call the Middleton Place Somerville Seismic Zone. This is an area where maybe about 70% of all earthquakes in South Carolina are supposed to happen, but they haven't been. They've been happening up over here by Elgin and another area where they have the Virgil C. Summer Nuclear Power Plant right there. The largest earthquake, I believe, was a 2.4. And that was, let me bring this up so you can read it, on November 30th of last year. All these earthquakes that are occurring there in Elgin are interplate earthquakes, meaning they're not along any tectonic boundary. They're in a location of ancient faults that have built up stress. And yeah, the earthquake shouldn't be happening. But because of the movement of the Atlantic moving with the North American plate, yeah, we're getting earthquakes. Before I jump into the Charleston, South Carolina, this area, the region, the seismic zone, and the threat of earthquakes, I want to jump over here to the Helena Banks Fault. This earthquake was only recently, or this fault zone was only recently discovered, and is only 12 kilometers offshore. Originally, they thought it was 30 kilometers long, but then they discovered that it was much longer than that, and has a potential of creating a tsunami. The Helena Banks Fault is about 68 miles long and is a steep fault. Two recent earthquakes in that area was a magnitude 4.0. It was only 2 kilometers in depth, And let's see, that was November 11th, 2022. This fault zone, the HBFZ, can cause large damaging earthquakes in the future. And it's important to note that the possibility of earthquakes and the activation of this fault would cause tsunamis, which would be very dangerous to the coastal areas of South Carolina. South Carolina has found that the earthquake hazard map that USGS puts out is highly inadequate. So they have developed some of their own hazard maps. And here we have, that was published in 1996, a hazard map for the coastal plains area. Let me bring this down. All those areas that are marked in yellow is areas where the ground would turn to quicksand. Yeah, and I've talked about there in the Caribbean, when there was large earthquakes, people sunk up to their necks in sand, and of course they died. The areas of purple are areas where the buildings would more likely collapse. And we got Lake Marion over here, and I'm not sure what this area here is, but it's by Berkeley. And then the orangish, pinkish color, that would be municipalities, it says. And, well, we got yellow, which would be liquefaction. I don't really know about. It's also got airports and things like that. Let me bring this out a little bit because I think this is really important because so many people live along the coast there of South Carolina. Yeah. The areas marked in green are areas that have landslide potentials. And I'll bring that in. So here we have Columbia. And then over to the right is Sumter. We got Richland and Calhoun, it looks like. I believe this fault was discovered in 1981. Could it trigger another large earthquake there in the Charleston, South Carolina area? I don't know. I also have drawn out the Woodstock Fault. See that? It goes through a large area. Now, the Charleston earthquake of 1886 was the most significant earthquake in South Carolina history, one of the largest on the U.S. East Coast. The earthquake caused extensive damage to Charleston and was felt over a wide area, from central Alabama to central Virginia. It led to the deaths of about 60 people and caused significant destruction to building and infrastructure. The initial shock lasted nearly 1 minute. Can you believe it? 1 minute going side to side, probably for at least 3 feet in each direction. It was felt over 2.5 million square miles. Was even felt in Cuba, to New York, to Bermuda, the Mississippi River area also. Structural damage extended over several hundred miles to cities in Alabama, Ohio, and Kentucky. A study published by the South Carolina Emergency Management, I'm not sure what year, but they figured if such an earthquake occurred today, 45,000 people would be killed, of which 9,000, about 20% of the population, would have minor injuries requiring hospitalizations. A daytime event would be a higher number of casualties. Nearly 70,000 households, or about 200,000 people, would be displaced, with an estimated 60,000 people requiring short-term shelter. Total economic losses from damage to buildings, direct businesses, interpretation losses, and damage to transportation and utility systems would exceed $20 million. With today's inflation costs, I'm sure that would be a lot more. Direct economic losses due to building damages, and this is not buildings, this is private homes, are estimated would exceed over $14 billion. Transportation and utility systems, direct economic losses would exceed $1 billion. About $10.9 billion in economic losses would occur in the Tri-County area of Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester. More than 250 residents would burn, primarily in the Tri-County area. The lack of equipment and water due to the earthquake would be a major concern. About 80% of urban households in the area would not have water. It would take weeks, if not months, to restore the water systems to normal operations. Hospitals in the area would likely have significant building damage, which could result into 30% of the hospitals, or about 180, about 30%, being non-functional. More than 220 schools and more than 160 fire stations would have significant damage. In addition, extensive damage is expected to impact large inventory, relocatable school buildings, those, like trailers. Close to 800 bridges would be damaged beyond use. About 63 electric power facilities, 51 substations out of 380, and 12 power plants out of 53 would have at least moderate damage. About 300,000 households would be without power. Another earthquake that a lot of people probably don't know about and haven't heard about is up over here. Let me bring it out. It was a magnitude 5.5 right there in 1913. That was by Union City. This earthquake occurred 27 years after the Charleston 1886 earthquake. It occurred in the afternoon of January 1st, 1913 at 1:28 p.m. near the town of Union in Union County, with an estimated magnitude of 5.5. Shockwaves moved out from the western portion of South Carolina into adjacent Georgia and North Carolina. It was even felt in parts of Virginia. Also, in 1913, there in Somerville, there was an earthquake. We'll go back down over here by Charleston, right there. That was a magnitude 6.6. This earthquake also caused damage to Charleston and surrounding small towns. Despite the size of the earthquake, a magnitude 6.6, there was no reports of fatalities. In Edgefield, South Carolina, there was a magnitude 5.1. Let me see if I can find that one. I believe that's up north here. Right there. That earthquake, too, was widely felt across the southeastern United States, but surprisingly, it caused only minor damage to the immediate area around Edgefield. In 1969, Charleston had a moderate-sized earthquake. Let me bring it down. Go back over here. I must not have it posted on here where the location was. That was only a magnitude 3.5. It occurred on September 10th, 1969, and it caused minor damage to some buildings and was felt across the region. South Carolina continues to experience small earthquakes from time to time, typically in the range of a magnitude 2 to a magnitude 3. These historic earthquakes highlight the seismicity activity in South Carolina, particularly in the coastal and eastern part of the state. While major damaging earthquakes are relatively rare, the state's history shows that it is not immune to significant seismic events, and preparedness efforts are important for residents and authorities alike. Yet this reality and the threat of future catastrophic South Carolina earthquakes is virtually unknown to the vast majority of state's residents and millions of people who visit here. A survey done in 2008, over 125 years or something like that, after the Great Charleston earthquake, the residents of South Carolina have no greater awareness of the state's earthquake hazards. One of the main reasons that they don't have an awareness about the threat of earthquakes, just like those in Charleston before the 86 earthquake, is because no one living in South Carolina since their birth hasn't experienced a catastrophic event here. Second, no government agency in the history of the state has attempted to put useful earthquake awareness and preparedness information directly into the hands of the people. As a result, less than one South Carolinian out of 1,000 is actively aware of the state's earthquake history and hazards. Yeah, so I hope you're prepared for the next big one. So many people aren't. Can you believe that? Only 1 in every 1,000 people is aware of the threat? I hope you're prepared. Please put your comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I will talk to you later. God bless y'all. Bye.